What is the economy going to look like in the future? I've spent the last few years thinking about Web3 ecosystems and economic systems, and this has been a question I've been asking myself a lot recently. I'm quite optimistic over the long term, but it is going to take time to implement and adopt better economic ideas with implementations that are actually scalable and reliable. To understand what this future economy might look like, let's discuss what the positive impact could be for some of the economic ideas that I previously talked about. First, we should go through the three most compelling sources of taxation that could help with completely transforming society. We've talked about two of them already, which were land value taxes and money taxes. Both of these taxes help to reduce unearned income. They also help to prevent compounding returns and consolidations in ownership of land or money. The third source of taxation comes from Web3 networks. Web3 networks are decentralized and distributed ledger-based ecosystems that use cryptographic consensus and smart contracts to enable trust-minimized applications, digital assets, and community-driven governance. These networks enable anyone to participate in this new and emerging global digital economy. Over time, applications and services will be built on these networks that replace a large number of the centralized services that you use today. Things like banks, social media networks, and online marketplaces can all eventually be replaced with decentralized alternatives. With Web3 technology, everyone can own their own data, money, and identity. They will finally have full control over their digital life, rather than this control being in the hands of centralized providers. The question for Web3 networks is, where will this third source of taxation come from? To operate these Web3 networks, they have their own dedicated network coin. This coin helps with creating a circular economy. The network coin is commonly used to pay for network usage, which means that people need to purchase the coin to use the network. A decentralized network requires many node operators. These operators are different groups of people that run the network software on their own servers. Together, these node operators are responsible for running the network. The network coin is used to compensate these node operators for validating and recording any transactions. This verification process means the network is being operated as it was intended. A network coin is a fungible asset just like money is a fungible asset. The same problems of unearned income, compounding returns, and consolidations in ownership are just as relevant for Web3 networks as they are for land or money. You don't want the ownership of the network coin to consolidate into the hands of a few people over the long term. So, demerge is also an important solution for Web3 networks. Demerge means the network coin needs to have some form of carrying costs, such as from fees or decay of the coin. A network coin tax, similar to a money tax, would mean that a Web3 network could solve the problems around unearned income, compounding returns, and consolidations in ownership. As well as that, the tax income could be used for funding any maintenance and improvements of the network itself. A network coin tax can help with creating a reliable and sustainable circular economy. The other huge opportunity with the income source for a global Web3 network is how it could be used to fund global public goods. To understand the scale of the opportunity, consider the following. The money supply for the United States dollar, the Chinese yuan, and the euro all exceed $10 trillion each in value. The global stock market is worth somewhere above $100 trillion. Money, stocks, and digital assets could all be deployed and operated on Web3 networks. Even being conservative, we could expect to see one or multiple Web3 networks that eventually surpass $50 trillion in total market cap sometime in the future, and eventually even potentially higher than that. When the value of a network is this high, the potential income from even a small network coin tax is enormous. For a network worth $50 trillion, a 1% network coin tax would mean $500 billion in income. 2% would obviously be $1 trillion. Now, let's imagine this income was used to fund highly skilled software developers that will get paid on average $500,000 each for the year. $1 trillion in tax income would mean 2 million software developers could be funded every year. A Web3 network will need ongoing amounts of maintenance and improvement, that's for sure, but it likely doesn't need $2 trillion worth of development each and every year. If anything, the funding that's necessary for the network should level off at some point, and then any excess income could then be used to fund global public goods. That could mean funding research and innovations in medicine, energy, software, AI, or robotics, as just some examples. A huge benefit of public goods funding is the outcomes don't need to be patented or protected. The outcomes from these funded initiatives should be for the benefit of everyone. Any new innovations could be adopted at a rapid pace across the world. Web3 networks and network coin taxes have a huge potential to fund meaningful amounts of research and innovation that could be highly beneficial for the global population. Web3 networks would become a global source of funding that is available to anyone around the world, meaning anyone could be selected to contribute on globally impactful initiatives and be well compensated for their efforts. Money is the second important taxation source for the future economy. Money is another economic system that benefits from adopting demerge, using something like a money tax. A money tax would help to reduce unearned income and prevent compounding returns and consolidations in the ownership of the money supply. As we mentioned before, a number of fiat currencies already have money supplies that are worth well over $10 trillion in value. So it won't be surprising to see new systems of money that will be worth a similar amount in the future. And these systems could adopt demerge by using a money tax. A 1% money tax on a $10 trillion supply of money would be $100 billion in taxation income. 3% would be $300 billion. This is a meaningful amount of funding for a national government. The income could be used to pay for government operational costs, national defense, pensions, law enforcement, courts, prisons, or healthcare services, just to name a few examples. Money taxes are a reliable source of income for nation states that want to manage and operate their own system of money. The third compelling source of tax income for the future economy is from land. Land value taxes are an important solution for reducing unearned income and preventing compounding returns and consolidations in the ownership of land. To highlight one example, a very conservative estimate of the value of the land in the United States would be around $30 trillion, and most of the estimates I've seen are above this. In 2024, the United States government spent around $6 to $7 trillion as part of the federal budget. If land was taxed at around 20 to 30% of its value, this could cover the United States federal budget. Now, in practice, you actually want to tax most or all of the land value to reduce the amount of unearned income that people are receiving from land rental income. And the land value taxation would also likely reduce the value of the land relative to the other assets due to this added tax. So, in practice, the tax percentage required to cover the United States federal budget would likely be higher after taking into account any reduction in the value of the land due to the added land value taxes. Land value taxes represent a huge income source that could help with funding most or potentially even all of a nation's government. It's an ideal source of income for funding local infrastructure like roads, bridges, water and sewage systems, hospitals, parks, electrical grid systems, and so on. The income could also help with covering many of the other government-related expenses we mentioned previously. Another benefit of land value taxes is how it makes it easier to localize the administration of the taxation. Local areas could collect and spend the taxation income themselves. This can really help to decentralize the responsibility and governance efforts involved with handling land-based taxation income across the different geographical locations. Let's finish up on the big three opportunities for taxation in the future. The three sources of tax that we covered are Web3 network coin taxes, money taxes, and land value taxes. These are all non-distortionary taxes. When you tax any of these assets, you don't get less of them. A huge opportunity with migrating towards these sources of taxation is you can eventually remove most or all of the distortionary taxes that we see today, such as income taxes, corporation taxes, and property development taxes. Any income people receive from doing work or providing a service doesn't need to be taxed. Company profits also don't need to be taxed. Developing new buildings or making changes to existing buildings doesn't need to be taxed. These changes would mean everyone would have the maximum incentive to productively contribute towards the economy, as they will always receive and benefit from the full amount of compensation for doing so. Whether that's providing labor, starting a company, or building or improving a property, contributors would get to keep all of the upside. Instead of receiving unearned income for just owning some land value taxes mean you become incentivized to use the land as productively as possible, which could mean building or upgrading the infrastructure on that land so you can generate more income. Instead of receiving unearned income for just owning money, money taxes mean people become incentivized to invest their money into a business or deposit this money as collateral in the financial markets to generate income, as otherwise they would just be losing money due to a money tax. Instead of receiving unearned income for just owning a Web3 network coin taxes mean a Web3 ecosystem can more easily maintain and improve itself, and eventually it can help with funding global public goods that could completely transform society. All of these taxes help to incentivize the productive usage of economic assets like land, money, and Web3 network coins. They also help to prevent these assets from consolidating into the hands of a few people, which creates economic systems that are reliable and sustainable over the long term. Think about how much simpler these taxation systems are. You could work in 1 or 100 different companies, and you could have multiple companies yourself. You'd never need to think about income taxes or corporation taxes. Your only tax obligations would be to pay any land value taxes you owe for utilizing certain areas of land, something that's as simple as a monthly rental payment. You would also pay money taxes and Web3 network coin taxes, but these would be automatically handled for you in a digital system. So no more complex tax returns, no more calculating what you owe. You can just focus on using your skills and providing labor, starting new companies, and building things that create impact in your community. A vision for the future economy and taxation is one where everyone is highly incentivized to contribute towards the economy, where people receive the full reward for their contributions, and where economic systems are designed to encourage economic activity rather than enabling stagnation and consolidations in ownership. This is the future for taxation in the global economy. We now need to talk about the future of organizations. Previously, we covered how permanent shares of ownership are a flawed approach for structuring a company. Eventually, permanent shares can lead to earlier contributions becoming excessively rewarded and growing amounts of stagnation in who has control over the company. The problem with permanent shares is that they have governance and compensation rights that never expire or lapse. Temporary shares of ownership help with solving this problem. Once a contribution is fairly rewarded, the share of ownership can lapse and expire as the compensation and governance rights are no longer necessary. This means active contributors will be the ones who have governance influence over how an organization is operated. The other important part of fixing organizations is about how we can improve our capability to understand and evaluate contributions. Reliably evaluating and understanding the performance and impact of contributions means we can better align the incentives with rewarding contribution more accurately. This is inherently a very complex topic area, but if we can move closer towards that outcome, it means that people become increasingly incentivized to give their absolute best when they contribute towards any organization. This is the dream of a perfect organization. Everyone is rewarded fairly. For organizations that want a more competitive environment, this means the most impactful contributions are always recognized and rewarded. But the future of organizations is not one-directional, towards only highly competitive environments, organizations that might focus on rewarding contributions based on performance and impact. Instead, it's where we can create and join organizations where people have different values, preferences, and motivations. Some organizations could be highly cooperative, and they might prioritize community well-being and shared benefits. Others that are more competitive might be seeking the very best talent that the world has to offer. Talent that is looking to be rewarded for being a top-performing contributor. The future possibilities of organizations is exciting. There are so many ways that we can work together to create more exciting and fulfilling work environments. But to get there, we need to establish the right foundations. Temporary shares of ownership is part of that solution. Improving how we can understand and evaluate contributions is a longer-term project that will also be important for aligning the incentives. The final part of the economy we need to talk about is governments, which are also in need of reform. One of the first things that governments could adopt is land value taxes, starting small and slowly growing this form of tax over time. Eventually, a new system of money can also be introduced with money taxes. Government taxes can then be greatly simplified by slowly removing distortionary taxes like income taxes, corporation taxes, and property taxes. 4 to 5 year election cycles are slow, and they limit the amount of involvement people can have in governments. In a world that is rapidly changing, stagnation and slow governance is a massive concern. Direct democracy and liquid democracy should help with enabling more involvement and choice in how people participate in the democratic process. That does not mean involvement in every government decision. Instead, it's more about the big decisions that can impact people's lives. The entire process and system for managing community funds also needs to be overhauled. Innovations in how to govern community funds is already happening across Web3 networks. We'll likely see more innovations in governance systems being adopted in Web3 networks before they are adopted in nation-states. A vision for the future of our governments is one where we can participate in the decisions we care about and delegate our vote to others that we trust for certain topics. A government where we can elect or delegate our votes towards people that specialize in important topic areas. With the right technology and tools, governments can eventually become more efficient at responding to the needs and preferences of the communities they serve. That was an overview of where I think we're heading to fix the global economy. The incentives of the economy can be completely transformed by adopting better taxation approaches, and these changes can dramatically improve society and global prosperity. Economic systems shouldn't become increasingly owned by a small number of people. Economies don't need to excessively reward people for simply owning certain assets. Instead, our economy can fully reward people based on their contributions and the impact they are generating for society. Land value taxes, money taxes, and Web3 network coin taxes. Temporary shares of ownership for organizations, and more democratic and decentralized governments. Incentives that are aligned with rewarding those that contribute rather than those that simply own assets. That is my vision for the future of our global economy. Thanks for watching this video series on understanding the economy, its problems and solutions. See you soon.